Here. All right, we are live. Let me get us go live up here. Looks like Instagram. Hello, everybody. We're having a little bit of a hiccup here with Instagram, but that's okay because I think we're going to kind of just move forward. Oh, there it goes. Looks like it's kicking on there. So I'm going to kick it up over on Instagram as well. This is, to be fully transparent, the first time I have done a multi-channel stream. Usually just pick a channel, but decided that this would be fun. And so Lynda gets to be the test person with me as we discover this and see if everything streams where it's supposed to. I'm grateful for the technology that allows us to do this because as tricky as it can sometimes be to figure it all out, how cool is it that you can have a message and in a matter of minutes be talking to whomever, whatever number of people happen to tune in now or after the fact. In my mind, that is super, super cool. So with that said, I have Lynda Thies here and I'm excited. So let me just tell you a little bit about how Lynda and I know each other and then tee in because I want to give Lynda a chance to talk about herself and what she does because listening to her say it with her enthusiasm, I think helps to drive an understanding of what she does when you hear the tone in her voice as she talks about the importance of it. Lynda and I are in a mastermind together and good story is that the first time I did an in-person event for this mastermind, Lynda was really the first person I sat and had a conversation with. We were in the little lobby area outside. And so I think there's those pivotal moments in your life where the person that's there with you gets sealed into that. But I would be remiss if I were to act like that's the only reason that Lynda and I have been able to kind of stay connected and have such great conversations. There's just so many ways that we are able to support one another, encourage one another from both a professional perspective and a personal perspective, help each other be accountable, but also give each other some compassion when that's needed. So I'm super grateful for that. And that is a big part of what has triggered us doing this go live, but also there's so much that Lynda has to offer. And she's often, and I say this lovingly, she's often, not so much lately, kind of out of the light because she's just kind of busy doing her thing. And so she isn't always stepping forward to kind of show what she's doing. And she's starting to do that more because as we discuss, people can't reach out to you and ask for help if they don't know that you're there. And so Lynda's doing that more and more. And hopefully this will be a part of making people aware of what she does. She's a health empowerment advocate and she is all about, and that's a big thing, right? You hear health and it's not one specific thing. And it is broad what she does, but she's encouraging people to make sure that they do the discovery necessary to make sure that any treatments that they go through or don't go through are made with the best informed decisions in mind. So I don't even know that phrase made sense, but that's what came out. So that's what we're going to go with, which is why I said you should talk about what you do, because clearly I had some trouble getting those words out. So with that, I would love, Lynda, for you to briefly talk a little bit about what you've done, maybe a little bit of your journey, how it's got to where you are, what you're passionate about with that. And then I have some questions I want to talk about in ways that I can share with our audience, like deeper levels of how we've talked offline, but kind of take it a step further and talk about how we've connected in that regard. So, and I don't know why, for some reason today, I seem to be having trouble with getting my words out, but that's okay. So hopefully you will take over right now and give my mind a second to catch up with whatever's going on in there. Well, so Lynda, go ahead.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be on this call. But first, I just want to thank you as well for the friendship and, just knowing that you have such a great heart. I know that your audience is going to be incredibly, continually blessed by all that you offer. We've had so many different conversations, but just explaining a little bit about what I do. I have over 5 decades. It's kind of frightening to think. Some were involuntary, some were intentional, and some were in between those two. Experience with advocating for family members in a variety of circumstances, everything from brain injuries to chronic illness and orthopedic surgeries, just pretty much everything. And what happened along the way for me and how I ended up really being in this position to want to encourage people to take control of their health and really be the CEO of their health is that I learned so much along the way that I took for granted, that I really thought everybody knows how to do this. And in reality, so much comes into play when you are faced with any of these circumstances or situations. And then when it came to my own health issues, I had a whole career plan. I was going off on a different direction, but then, when you do all that advocating and then all of a sudden your health is affected, then you begin to realize that maybe there's another role here for me. And so that was what I started to develop a process, because I actually healed myself of 40 symptoms. I've avoided 4 major surgeries, and I don't take any prescription drugs. And, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things. I'm just saying that for me and my journey and understanding on the backside how that's affected family members, that was important for me. So this is just an important journey that I think everyone needs to learn from.
Yeah, thanks. And while you were talking, Lynda, I was trying to make sure, because I've heard a lot of the story, so I was trying to make sure I pick up on, because it's interesting when you tell the story, different little phrases that you'll use. So even though it's the same story, because we all have those stories that are meaningful to us. And I think back to that time when we were sitting in the couch, right? And we had met each other for the first time. So it's like, what do you choose to share with somebody when you're meeting them for the first time and you want to give them kind of enough depth to understand what's important to you, but with enough brevity that you're not talking for 4 hours? Because I'm sure either of us could go on for more than that, sharing about the lessons we've learned and why they matter to us. And I remember you saying how in those circumstances, because you made a good point there, you said, you've been able to avoid surgeries and medication. You're in no way, shape or form saying like medication and surgeries are
Right.
a negative thing. It's just that anytime that we receive any type of treatment, we want to be thinking about, is this the best treatment? What are the options? And that's one of the things where you and I have really connected, right? Is that idea of like taking time to pause and really think things through. Like when I'm working with, whether it's a company or an individual person as a client, and they're coming because they either are making a change or they think they need to make a change and they're trying to work through it. One of the things we talk about is making sure that we take time to look over those resources. And particularly in the medical field right now, the internet has been really great in that you can find all these resources, but it can also be very problematic. I probably would imagine almost everybody that's listening now or after the fact will have at some point Googled something that they were experiencing to get an idea. And look, and there's some really reputable sources out there. So that's not necessarily a negative thing, but we do want to make sure that with all of the resources that we're checking, that we're vetting them. But it's not just on the internet where we need to do that. Right? Like that's the common thing. Everybody's like, oh, don't use, Google Doctor. Fine. We want to make sure that we're vetting those sources, but it's also the people that we go and talk to in person, that we're making sure we're asking the right questions, understanding where their perspective is, where they're coming from. And you said something to me the other day, which I'm going to attach to medical, even though the questions that I was asking you weren't about. There was some information that I needed to sort through, and I wanted to make sure that I was sorting through it in a clear way. And as I tell other people, I think a lot of times it's really good to make a phone call, talk to somebody and weigh some of those things. And, you were my first phone call, and I kind of gave you some of these are my concerns. These are the things that I think are positive. These are right. All of the various ways that this could have implications. And you very succinctly said to me, which I would have said to somebody else, but you were saying it to me, and you said it in such a beautiful way. You need to ask the right questions to understand motivations and understand next steps, et cetera. And then you need to step back and you need to take time to think about that. And while we certainly have situations where sometimes we need to make that quick decision, a lot of times we may put more need for rapidness on something than is actually necessary, when we do need to pause and take that. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I think that's one of the really powerful things you do, is that you're telling people just pause and make sure you're asking questions, you're looking at all of your options, and you're considering everything before making a decision, so that that you're making at least the best decision you can at that time. But if you could share that, because the way you said it was just,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, just on a decision-making level for all areas of your life, when we get emotions in the middle of it, excuse me, we tend to not get enough oxygen to our brain. We're panicked, we're nervous, our heart rate's up. So it's easy to make, a quick, rational decision, which maybe turns out to not be so rational. So what I, had recommended, and I think this is the way that I live my own life with everything else, is, you need to, really take a step back. You really need to weigh in all of the information you have. And that includes, for me, especially, I got this great lesson from my father when he was dealing with his terminal illness. And that was, he went to his doctor and he said, I need help. I need you to help me. I want you to walk through this with me. And he essentially said, which I have kind of phrased, I don't know how it was phrased, it's been 27 years ago, don't let your diagnosis be your prognosis. And so that was really the big pivotal moment where I knew that there was time for a pause. And there's always time for a pause, whether it's in business, whether it's in your health. And sometimes they can both be as gravitas, they can both have very heavy energy around both of them. And you want to make a decision, or you get pressured to make a decision. And I think in advising you, it was just step back, write down all your pros and cons, really evaluate what questions you have unanswered. Like when we're quick to make decisions, we're making them without all of the information. And then have those conversations. So I always say, make your doctor your partner, not your manager. And I think that's also true of anybody in life. It's your life. It's your decision making that you need to make. And so while I take it all under advisement, I think ultimately you combine that with your faith and your intuition, and you ascertain what the motivation is, whether that's in a business sense or in a medical sense. Today, I found out a decision I was weighing, and I was going to have a procedure done. And I put the pause on that last week. And this week I went and had another appointment. Turns out I really didn't need that last appointment, which was a different procedure. Had I done that, it only had a 10% or a 10-year success rate. So, you're not getting all that information. So that's why it's super important, whether it's business or whether it's personal health, to take the time to pause and to really evaluate so that you can make an informed, calm decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and there's so many pieces to, the example that we're using of me reaching out to you that are critical, right? Number one, it's, look, I do growth and change, and I recommend and help guide people through making major decisions. I had a major decision and I went to somebody, right? Like, it's not necessarily an indication that you are not good at making decisions, but to your point, the emotion of it, and when it's yourself, and even your immediate family, I mean, friends, it kind of depends on the circumstances, right? But you want to make sure that the person you're going to is going to help you to kind of detach the emotion from the actual facts. And the other piece is that, we tend to look at things in like, it's this or that. And in some circumstances it is, I'm going to have the procedure or I'm not going to have the procedure. I'm going to take this medication or I'm not going to take this medication. Or we could apply that to business decisions. And sometimes the answer lies somewhere in the middle. You're going to take a little bit of this and you're going to take a little bit of that. But you can't really arrive at that compromise and find what's going to work best for you unless you take the time to find out what those other options are, and then kind of sit with them, right? And sort through what feels comfortable. And sometimes even when for example, okay, this is a procedure I'm going to have, but I can't have it right now because of ABC, so I'm going to have to schedule it down the road. So you've got to kind of put all those pieces together, right? An advocate's not there to give you the answer, right? The doctors and the medical professionals are there to tell you, these are your options. These are what we know about the potential benefits. These are the potential side effects. An advocate is there to help you step away from the emotion of it and just look at the facts so that you can calmly kind of make a decision, noting that obviously your emotions are going to come in with it. And that's where I think is the incredible value, right? Is that, again, you're helping to make, I love that, your medical professional, your partner, and not your manager. Right. So the advocate's there to help you facilitate that conversation in the same way that we in a business structure have different people with different roles to weigh information cross-check each other. I wonder too, it's interesting knowing your background, and I'm not going to make you talk a whole bunch about it, but knowing that you had that background where you were involved in taking information and having to make sure that you were presenting it in a very factual format, particularly when in that scene, it can sometimes be very tricky to navigate. Do you think any of that plays into you, how you advise as an advocate, kind of keeping in mind how people can sometimes only hear what they want to hear?
Well, I think having a background in organizational development and communication definitely played a big part, because then you are taking the 40-foot view, right? So you're always stepping back and assessing all of the different parts of the puzzle. I don't think that you can, in business, just go, oh, I'll just do whatever, right? You don't just throw your hands up. We call it negotiation. Well, when you approach medical things, people just throw their hands up and go, oh, they know more than I do. Well, they know more, but they don't know all. And I think that's the empowerment piece. It's like, wait a minute, you have the ability to have a discussion or a negotiation, if you want to call it that, to be able to make, better informed decisions. So, some of the things in my background, working in, creating your own path was not easy, because it wasn't like I got a degree in accounting and I knew exactly where I was going to go and exactly what I was going to do. So I was always evaluating and, kind of commenting. So I think that's probably a pretty accurate statement, just navigating some of the things that I did in international sports marketing and in nonprofits. And so I kind of did the 40-foot view on everything in my career. I really wanted to have a broad base of experience. I didn't know I was going to use it for medical decisions.
Right.
But yeah, it definitely plays a huge role. And I remember even in my, worked for a television station in advertising sales, and everything's a negotiation. Everything's up for discussion. And if you don't have those exposures, if you don't have that experience, maybe people are less likely to approach what they feel is an authority figure who's going to tell them what's best for them, because it's easier to just take a pill or do a surgery than it is to actually step back and really get involved. But I think in both circumstances, and in business and in health, better outcomes happen when you step back, take that 40-foot view, and really see what is the best.
Yeah. And the research includes ourselves, right? Like, part of your recommendation to me was to make your own list, right? And I mean, we were chuckling when we were having the conversation, because it's coaches need coaches, right? You need to help. We help each other. Make your own list of the things that are immediately coming to your mind, and then the ones that are going to come to you as you kind of let it trickle down and you sit with it a little bit. And again, there are, crisis situations. I always, when I'm on these different calls, I always want to note, like, there are crisis situations where you have limited time to make a decision. And I don't want to make it sound like you or I are trying to advise that, like, hey, anytime there's a decision, just say, wait, I got to think about it. Like, if you're in a crisis situation, you're going to do the best you can with the circumstances to make the decision. But when you have those opportunities to sit and pause, even when sometimes it feels like the outside forces or individuals are pressing in on you and making you make it feel like it's urgent, like this decision needs to be right now. A lot of times that force coming in that's telling you that it's urgent is really just your emotions stirring up kind of that little bit of panic, because when we have to make a decision and we don't want to mess it up, and so then we start to feel a little panicky, which makes us feel like we need a rush. But like, taking the pause to do that, take that research and kind of weigh through those different things. And you have remarkable stories in your own life and stories of other people that you've helped because of saying, like, let's just look at the different options. And there was different medical professionals, not saying that anybody's right or wrong, but different perspectives and putting that stuff all together. And I always find this is just something I think is cool from a conversation perspective with everybody I talk to, right? I always it's interesting how you can see, like, there's usually like a core thing that weaves in and out, right? Like, I do growth and change, and you can see that kind of in my poetry. You can see that in my conversations. And with you, you have stuff that you sell, but which you don't even really, make a lot of, you don't make it very visible a lot, right? Like you don't talk about it a lot, but not because you don't think it's important, but because it becomes more of like those underlying conversations. If somebody inquires and says, hey, do you know if there's something that could help me with such and such, you have that available. But it has to do with like even the choices you made and what you would or wouldn't sell had to do with you really making sure like I'm vetting this and I'm clear on what the type of product is and is this going to be valuable. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. You certainly don't have to. That wasn't initially my intent, but as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking like, yeah, like that's what drove you to make those choices. You had a lot of options and you're like, I'm going to make sure that it's going to be something I can really get behind.
To your point earlier about, not when you're in a crunch situation and being able to kind of be a crisis manager, I kind of liken that in the medical world. Like when you're in a crisis, you do have to lean a little bit more on their expertise. But I think it also means too, like you reaching out to me reaching out to you or other people, when you think of yourself, you think of yourself as the CEO of yourself, right? And I'm always going to pull in people who are smarter than me or who have other skills than I have. And so I think that's, something I just wanted to add in there that I think would be very beneficial to your listeners to shift and in their mind or change in their mind the way they think about that. But to your point, yes, I absolutely don't represent anything that I don't vet or that I don't believe in for sure. And so I found this nutraceutical company that does liposomal technology. The technology is as advanced, if not the same level as pharmaceutical technology. And what's really impressive about it is that there is absorption studies to back it up because, people don't understand, when you are looking for supplements or when you are looking for things that maybe you can take on your own on the side, what ends up happening for a lot of people, including me, because you don't just figure this all out, what I mean? This is a journey and a process for me that's taken over time. And there was a period of time where I literally had $500 to $600 a month in supplements. I probably had 40 bottles, probably more than that. I don't think I ever wanted to know what the total was. And at the end of the day, what happens is people don't understand that so many products are white labeled. And so they don't have the potency that people think they do. So as people in this industry like to say, it's just very expensive pee. Which is, not necessarily polite conversation, but it is what it is. So yeah, the company that I'm representing, I definitely want people to know that, in the work that I do, I'm only affiliated with companies that I believe in. And that company for me right now is 3 International. So I'm always happy to talk to people about ways that they can improve their health because, the fact of the matter is the soil is not the same as it was when our grandparents were growing up. And, there's far more processed foods. There's far more toxins. There's far more chemicals. Most of the stuff in our supply in America uses chemicals that are banned in Europe and other countries, like 1400 in Europe, for example, in just skincare and cosmetics. So, it's very easy to get overwhelmed and get confused. And so, speaking out on these topics, I hope, that people will understand that I don't have that desire to sell someone something. I want to help. I want to serve and I want to be part of your journey to heal. So thank you for giving me a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I probably, I nudge you on that too, because I struggled with it myself, right? Like there's that hesitancy when you kind of step up to say, hey, I can help you with this. You don't want to give off the impression that you think you know more than it's just that you've got an insight, right? Like, I mean, you can have 2 different experts on the exact same topic and they can educate each other because you have different little pieces of information that you've got. And so I just think that it's really interesting. I mean, I didn't know this stuff and I'm one of those people who loves to learn and loves to read information. So when I get information and I want to kind of take that in. So you had been talking about it. So I thought, well, let me check this out. And I was just intrigued. I mean, it's science backed, right? This is what your body can do. This is what your body can't do. This is if you take 3,000 times the amount of something, it's not going to help you more, right? It's like, I think sometimes we think like, oh, if this is good for me, then much more will be even better for me, right? There's
Yeah.
different amounts and things that you need to take. So I hadn't really considered some of that stuff, even though I really try to be health conscious. So I think that that's an important part of it. And because if you are going to be talking to various medical professionals and getting different types of information, having some basic knowledge about that. And it's not because it's going to mean that knowing that is going to mean, again, I'm not taking the medication, I'm not doing the surgery, but so that you're asking the right questions about optimal opportunities
Right.
for success in whatever your chosen treatment method is, right? If you're going to do it, what is it that I should be taking or not taking in order to make sure that I'm supporting my body in the best way possible and my
There's
mind?
Yeah, and there's so much to that whole topic. I mean, for me, when I think about, the different family members that I've been, an advocate for, one of the most important things, not even talking about supplements have to be mentioned because they interact with prescription medication, but having a basic knowledge of what you're putting in your body and not just blindly trusting an influencer on social media or assuming that because someone's healing process, they use this, that, or the other is going to work for you. And
Right.
so it really is important, when you look at in the scheme of things, to not just blindly take something and hope it's going to improve your health. There's all kinds of blood work you can take to figure that out. But more importantly, I guess my message, and you brought that part up, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's like the biggest thing that I know about my mom, for example. I've helped her through 10 orthopedic surgeries. I know her medications. I know what she takes. And so when they start going sideways, like, oh, she went to a rehab center and they stopped giving her, a certain medication and it's starting to affect her body, I can speak up and advocate for that. And people just think you can go to a rehab center or go to a hospital and everything's copacetic and you just sit down and hang out with your loved one and just show that you're there. But it's really more than that. It really is important, to understand, like you can have, this is random, but you can have like somebody with a urinary tract infection. So random to even talk about that, right? Except it causes confusion, typically happens in older people. And so they get confused and then they're on the dementia track. They're on your loved one is, starting to lose their mind. And if you don't know better and they're not thinking in that way, you can say, have you done, a UTI test?
Right.
And so those are the kinds of things, that's why I think my expertise is really in, because of all of those exposures, because of all of those experiences helped me to see those things and to see them for what they are. Sometimes they're necessary. Sometimes you can't avoid it. You have to do it. But again, that's why you can't have an all or nothing mentality on that. So yeah, that's why I like educating people about it, because I'm so passionate about explaining all of these different things that they can do to be better.
Yeah, there's so much goodness in what you just said. So there's two particular things I thought that struck me. You were talking about what works for one person doesn't work for the other, right? I mean, you think about allergies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allergies. So one person can eat something and eat it in excess, and another person can't eat any of it without having an allergic reaction, right? Different
Right.
bodies process ingredients in different ways. And so again, it's knowing the options and also knowing what is going to work best for you, whether it's blood work or whether it's just having a conversation with someone. And then the other piece, so there's two levels really to what you do, right? There's the, I'm trying to think of the best phrase, but like there's the direct one-to-one. So like, let's say I have a health, say I have a health issue and I'm coming to you and I'm saying, I have this health issue. Can you, again, you're not going to give me this is what you should medically do. You're going to tell me how to advocate for myself, go to appointments with me if necessary, but just help me ask those questions. So you'd be working directly with me. But then there's the other part, which is you have a family member. So like if I had a family member, right? So now it's not necessarily me that's going through it, but I'm still being emotionally impacted. And again, so you're there to support the person, you're there to support family members, right? And offer that guidance and support to say, here are some questions you could ask. Here's what you should be doing. Here's keep a journal. Like when I think about, when my mom was going through cancer or when my dad had his heart surgery, there's so much information and you're overwhelmed and aware that the person who's going through the illness is not necessarily capable of making all the choices because they're just trying to feel okay. So
Right.
that's a lot. What is kind of your process? Do you generally let's say that I had somebody that I was cared about that was going through something, and I'm like, I really want to work with Lynda. Like, how does somebody then kind of initiate that with you? And what is your process? So like, I'm sure there's some folks who are either listening now or afterwards, and even just for my sake in conversations with people, what would somebody do? What would be the steps to work with you?
Sure, of course. First of all, one of the things that I determined kind of early on in my approach to sharing this information was that I really wanted to be an advocate. So it probably will be more along the lines of education and, maybe offering some courses to help people or some tools that people can use or take. I don't know that I could go through, after all the years that I've gone through, the individual dealings that would be best for me in those environments. But what I would recommend is if someone wants to, as I'm figuring out what my role is and how I'm doing this, because I've completely underestimated my value, if you will, on these topics, because it's just what I've done my whole life.
Right.
So as I'm figuring that out, I'm definitely open to having one-on-one conversations with people. And if they want to work with me, then I will walk them through the process. And the process for me, very simply, just a quick overview, is to write down what the diagnosis is, write down what all the symptoms are, write down all the medications, like all the details, how often you take them, what are the side effects that, or what side effects are you having? And so you start to look at it more as a little bit of a puzzle that you're trying to figure out. And then you have your list of questions. And then that's where you take your questions. And I think, like we talked earlier, we're saying it's like a negotiation in business. You're going into not necessarily negotiate, like, all right, let's not take this one or whatever and just make decisions. It's not that at all. It's really, when you come in prepared, you get to experience a different doctor. That I have experienced time and time again. When I know my stuff, when I know what I'm talking about, I get their attention. And that's what you want, because they can't partner with you if you don't know that information. So those are the first steps that I always advise that people do. And then after that, it really becomes a process of what is your doctor recommending, and then stopping and taking a look at what are the long-term effects of this, or what are the short-term effects, or, just really evaluating all of the information that they have, and then helping them figure out how to come up with the best decision. Not me, but teaching them how to do it. Because I think it's really important for everybody to have that message, not just me.
Right.
Everybody should be an advocate and should be telling other people to be an advocate, because at the end of the day, there's not enough of me and other people who do what I do to go around. And there's a lot of people who just feel like the person on the other side knows more than me, so I'm just going to surrender and throw my hands and wave the white flag and go, okay, tell me what to do. That's just not going to be the best option. So those would be my recommendations.
Yeah, and I should note, because I don't think we talked about this at the beginning of the call, or the go live here.
Yeah.
You're relatively new to doing it as a business model, because to your point, and so I think that's important for everybody to know, you just were always doing it. People were always coming to you and saying, hey, how should I handle this situation? So you were kind of naturally doing it. And I think that's part of, the reluctance for why you haven't been more visible about, hey, I'm here if you need help, because you were just always doing it and people knew about it. And so now you've said, okay, I'm going to offer this as a service, and I'm going to let people know that I have that availability to do that, which meant making some other career choices for you to make that time available.
Right.
And then in addition, obviously, you have the phenomenal products that you have that somebody could obviously reach out to you about, and you could share the information on. Hopefully, particularly with me continuing to nudge you, you'll become more and more visible. Okay. You're going to be on here more, so that people who don't already know you will get to know you and will know that they can reach out to you and get those questions about what they should do, because you're teaching people to fish, and then that's going to give them healthier lives for the long haul.
Right.
So I can't really think of much more that we would want than to know how to make sure that we're best able to get the best care necessary across our lives and obviously apply those same strategies to decisions we make, like, I did the other day with you. So,
Yeah.
what are the best ways for people to get in touch with you, Miss Lynda?
Right now, it would be, Instagram, Facebook, they can reach out on and DM me that way, and we can begin the process. I'm working on a website, so I should be able to have opportunities for people to sign up for appointments to have those conversations for sure.
Not should be able to, will be able to.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And I appreciate your nudging, Deb. You've always been in my corner, and I really am grateful. If for those of your listeners who are getting to know you as they follow you more, you will come to learn and know that the heart of the person with the mic on the other end is genuinely the biggest heart I think I've ever known. So.
Oh, thank you. Wow, that's amazing. I'm not going to cry on camera right now. We better end this call soon.
Yes.
I appreciate it. I see you. I appreciate the way that you are seeing and hearing people and making sure that they value themselves. I thank everybody that joined us today. I did see some people that were doing it. I didn't see any comments. If I missed something, because I did. There were some comments. I apologize for not having responded. I am still figuring out the multiple streaming here, so I don't think the comments fed over. So if we didn't respond, it was not because I saw your comment and didn't think it was important. Just trying to juggle, paying attention to all things that are going on here right in front of me and enjoying listening to the conversation itself. So if you would like an introduction to Lynda, you're more the type that kind of likes to have an introduction, please feel free to reach out to me and I will tee up that conversation. And in the meantime, follow Lynda as she suggested on those different platforms and watch. She's going to be doing video tidbits of little pieces of recommendation and things, and you'll get to watch her grow right in front of your eyes, grow her business, I should say. She already has had this wealth of knowledge, but grow the business. We appreciate you all. Any parting words, Lynda, before we sign off?
Just, don't be shy, be an advocate. It makes a difference. And thank you so much, Deb, for this time. I really appreciated it.
Excellent. Me as well. All right. Take care, everybody.